My name is Frank Brown. To give you a little background on myself, I'm a senior support escalation engineer in the Office 365 support area. I've been with Microsoft for 14 years in various forms and roles as networking support, also in the small business server support area, and most recently in Exchange and obviously Office 365 support. Today's presentation, we're going to be looking at a relatively new feature in the service. It's Office 365 message encryption, and as Heather already mentioned, we are recording today's session. So again, if you don't want any of your information recorded, just don't post it in the IM window. So with that, just give you an idea of what we're going to be looking at. Our current agenda is going to be, first of all, to kind of give you a brief overview of the need for message encryption, which I think most people are probably sensitive to these days. And we're doing that kind of just to give you an idea of how Office message encryption fits into the overall goal of message encryption for our customers. We'll then take a quick look at some of the current offerings within Office 365 that deal with encryption or security. And again, we're just doing that to give you I guess a place to kind of plug in Office 365 message encryption to give it a little context to it. And then what we'll do is give you kind of a brief overview of the actual workflow. How does it actually work within the service? Just to give you a basic understanding. We'll also look at the end user experience, and I think you'll be pleased with that. And we'll take a look at the real heart of the matter, which is what are some of the prerequisites to use message encryption, and how do you set it up within the service, how do you enable it, and then more importantly, how do you incorporate that into your transport rules or DLP rules. And then we'll take a look at some of the key Office 365 message encryption features, which I think you'll also like, and we'll finish up by looking at upgrading from Exchange hosted encryption. It shouldn't really be upgrading, it's more like transitioning from hosted encryption to Office 365 message encryption. So hopefully that'll get us through the hour. If you do have any questions, forgive me if I don't respond right away. We'll hopefully have time at the end to kind of handle some of those. So without further ado, we'll just kind of plot along. Okay, so when we think about message encryption, and especially message encryption in Office 365, what we're really talking about is the ability to ensure that a message sent from a tenant member or user in the service is actually going to be sent and then read by only the person it's intended for. So in other words, if it gets intercepted during that transmission process, we have some assurance that that message is not going to be able to be deciphered or cracked. And I think most of us on the call today know why we need to have some sense of message encryption, some sense of security when we do send messages, important messages. And what I did on the screen is just give you some examples of types of communication that either you may be involved in or you may have received these types of messages that contain maybe banking information, insurance information, or other sensitive information that's done as part of your business or as part of a customer to a business that may be in the service. And again, all those are very valid reasons why you want to try to protect that sensitive information. There are also other requirements that in a lot of cases are imposed or required based on the type of business you may be in. Probably more common examples of that would be like HIPAA requirements for health information, medical records, that kind of thing. Financial regulations that stipulate what information can be sent to customers and how it can be sent to those customers. So again, the need for message encryption is very prevalent, and a lot of tenants within Office 365 require that. So as a result, we're offering that in I think a rather enhanced fashion. So to kind of give us some perspective about where Office 365 message encryption kind of falls into the whole picture, I basically listed some common types of encryption techniques and methods that are often used in 365 to do various types of encryption, and a lot of these will seem very familiar. The most prevalent right now is, of course, TLS, SSL type of encryption, and that's primarily used to kind of protect the transport pipeline that we're using to send the information through. In a lot of cases, if you're setting up a hybrid environment, you'll automatically set up like a TSL connection between your on-premise environment and the service to, again, ensure that that information is secured and can't be snooped on or eavesdropped on. A little closer to home, if you have a Windows workstation, we have BitLocker technology, obviously, that uses hashes to encrypt the data that's stored locally on the drive, so that if somebody gets access to your machine, your laptop, they can't get access to the information contained in that laptop. Another technology we use, IRM or RMS, is used to persist access control documents, and it's typically done through the application of RMS templates on different types of documents, Word documents, Excel documents, etc. That's typically used to prevent accidental disclosure of information, to prevent users from doing certain operations on content, copying the information, printing it, forwarding it, and those can all be expressed through RMS templates and applied to the actual document itself. A little bit further down, we have S-MIME, which is more of a peer-to-peer cryptographic service between clients. Again, that provides more end-to-end type of encryption, so the message is signed, encrypted, and then on the receiving end, the receiver has to have the appropriate certificates in order to be able to open and read the information. That requires a little bit more maintenance of cryptographic services, key services, in order to implement effectively. And then, of course, we do have some tenants who implement other third-party solutions to provide cryptographic and privacy or authentication information, kind of like that end-to-end kind of encryption. Most notable is, of course, PGP. I think a lot of people are very familiar with that. So, again, now to provide a little context, Office 365 message encryption is more to ensure the integrity of the information, the message itself, as it's going in transit. So it's not like the peer-to-peer type of security, but it applies the RMS encryption to the message so that if it's intercepted during transmission, it can't be deciphered. And we'll take a look at that. All right, so what are the current issues with some of these encryption methods? Well, the most notable, of course, is RMS administration. A lot of our customers have indicated that sometimes RMS administration is a little bit more in-depth, involved in configuring and getting it set up properly. It requires both a knowledge of rights management service as well as Exchange and how those two things fit together. You have to actually configure it to integrate with RMS. Another disadvantage is a lot of the encryption solutions have limited client support for viewing encrypted messages. In other words, RMS probably is one of the most common examples, is in order to view an RMS encrypted in the typical sense, you have to have a client that is RMS aware. In other words, it knows how to interpret that right-protected message and communicate with your RMS service to get the appropriate keys and appropriate licenses. In the service, of course, you also can use hosted encryption, in which case you would be required to have a hosted mailbox to the RMS key accessible to the recipient. So again, some limitations there. A little on the secondary side is a lot of our encryption solutions don't provide any method for corporate branding, and some customers have asked that we provide a way for their companies to be able to emphasize that the information is encrypted and provide a little bit more specific branding to that end. And then finally, the legacy portal user experience. The current Exchange hosted encryption portal experience is kind of a pre-transitional experience. In other words, if you have been with Office 365 for a while, you know that the interface has changed somewhat. That's basically because, in this case, we're using the voltage encryption solution for the hosted Exchange encryption. So it has provided kind of a legacy portal experience, which some found a little bit disjointed a little bit. So this is an effort to kind of address that. All right, so to that end, we've introduced basically Office 365 message encryption around 4 central pillars. or goals, I guess, to try to address with this product. The first and primary one is to be able to send encrypted mail to anyone. And what I mean by that is being able to send encrypted mail to a recipient who is an Exchange user, on-prem or in the cloud, somebody using Gmail, someone using AOL or Yahoo or anything, basically. So we're trying to develop a solution that allows us to encrypt the message in such a way that it can be viewed by any client. You don't have to have a Microsoft mailbox in order to be able to view the encrypted message. Also wanted to provide a method for allowing customized corporate branding. So for instance, when the recipient receives an encrypted mail message, we want them to have a sense that it's from your tenant, your company, and you can customize some of the messaging around that encrypted notification. And of course, simplified administration, as you'll see as we go through this, Office 365 message encryption is integrated into the transport rule infrastructure and within the transport pipeline. So it makes it very easy, if you're already familiar with the transport rule concepts, to create them and integrate them into both just transport rules and also integrate them into other technologies like data loss prevention, DLP solutions. And then finally, on the end user side, we want to try to make it an easy to use experience. We want the user not to be intimidated by the whole process, that they will know how to handle an encrypted mail message. It should be fairly self-evident. All right, so this is going to be a little diagram just summarizing the general flow of how message encryption takes place within the Office 365 space. So as always with anything in the messaging world, we always start with a sender and a recipient. So the first action, of course, is for the sender to send a mail message to a recipient. Once it's received by the service, the message is going to be filtered based upon administrator-defined rules that have basically defined conditions for the encryption. So for instance, like I said, a transport rule, we may have a rule that says, hey, any mail going to external to my organization, I want it to be encrypted. It could be whatever. So once we send the message, the second step is to obviously evaluate the message based on our transport rules, see if those conditions are met, and then if the action is specified that we need to encrypt the message, our next step is to then retrieve the actual tenant keys, on-premise tenant keys required to encrypt the message. Now, during that process, what's actually happening is we're still using like the transport agents that we did on-premise to encrypt the data, right? RMS encrypted. The difference is we also have added other transport agents in the service to then take that encrypted message and create an HTML attachment. Okay, so what happens? Like I said, we encrypt the message, and then we basically convert that message, that encrypted message, to an HTML format, and then attach that to like a notification message that is then sent to the recipient. Okay. So that message is then delivered to the recipient, and the initial message is going to be more of a notification that kind of explains to the recipient that they have received an encrypted mail message, and then it gives them specific instructions on how to view the encrypted message. Typically what it'll tell them to do is to save, open the attachment, and then when they open the attachment, since it's in an HTML format, it issues kind of like a post command to an encryption portal. Okay, so that message then is sent in HTML format, encrypted, to the portal, and then the portal looks at the encrypted HTML post information, and then verifies the signature within that HTML message to verify that it did come from an Office 365 tenant, and then it will then perform a realm discovery on the recipient. In other words, the person it was sent to. So we look at the SMTP address of the recipient and then determine if that recipient is an Office 365 tenant or if they're external to Office 365. Okay. Now we prompt the user then to authenticate using either their organization ID if they're an Office 365 tenant, or to use a live ID if they are not an Office 365 tenant. And there seems to be quite a bit of confusion over this. A lot of people say, well, what if I send an encrypted mail message to someone who has a Gmail account, right? So obviously a Gmail account, they're not going to have an organization ID within our service. So what that requires is that the user, the Gmail user, basically use their Gmail SMTP address and create a live ID using that SMTP address. So once they do that, they can then log on to the live ID service with that Gmail SMTP address and the password that they create for themselves. Seems a little bit odd, but it's basically I think one of the biggest areas of confusion. So again, step number 6 is where we're authenticating with either our live ID or our organization ID. And then once we do that, once we've successfully authenticated, then the portal will go ahead and retrieve the recipient, or the sender tenant keys required to decrypt the message. Then the message is decrypted and then returned on the portal page for the user to then read and then either reply to or forward as they see fit. So again, pretty simple. I think a lot of people think that there's some kind of software they need on the receiving end, but there really isn't. It's basically the HTML attachment. When they open it, it posts that information to the portal. Once it's at the portal, then the user is authenticated. They have to use the same SMTP address that was used as the recipient when the message was addressed, and then the tenant keys are retrieved. Okay. So with that in mind, how do I get to use this? What are some of the prerequisites? Well, first of all, in order to use message encryption, Office 365 message encryption, you have to have a tenant running one of the following Office SKUs. So Office 365, E3 or E4, E1, K1, etc. Now, some things that you need to know. If you're using the E3 and E4 SKUs, basically rights management can be enabled. It's included, right? If you're using the E1 or K1 SKUs, you have to purchase Windows Azure Rights Management subscription. Same thing applies for Plan 2, Online Plan 2, Plan 1, and Kiosk, and also the mid-sized business. Okay? If you have Exchange on-premise and you're using EOP for your message hygiene and things like that, you can do that. You would have to purchase Windows Azure Rights Management, and then the second part of that is you would have to configure your on-premise environment to route your mail through Exchange Online. And again, the reason for that is pretty simple. Exchange Online is where you would be able to create the transport rules that evaluate the message and then apply the appropriate encryption. Okay, and then kind of related to this, rights management has to be enabled in the service. In other words, you have to have Windows Azure Rights Management. And in general, it's fairly simple to enable rights management. And you'll see in just a little bit, I'll have a couple screen captures coming up here showing how you do that through the Office portal. Okay, so to kind of help understand this, I basically created a very simple scenario just to kind of give us an example of how this could be used and then kind of step through how we would set it up. So in our scenario, we're assuming we work for a company called Contoso Pharma, and we want to basically just encrypt any message sent outside the organization that contains patient healthcare information. In this case, Sanja is a practitioner and is going to be sending an email that contains sensitive patient information to John, who's outside the organization, and obviously he wants that information to be protected and encrypted so that at least John has a sense that his information is not going to be disclosed unwittingly to somebody who it shouldn't be. So the very first thing we have to do is obviously set up for Office 365 message encryption, and it's basically a three-step process. The first step is going to be to activate rights management within the Office 365 service. Then we want to configure Office 365 and specifically Exchange to use the Windows Azure rights management service. And then finally, we would create a transport rule that contains the apply OME action to the message so that we can then apply encryption to the message as it's being processed. Okay, so again, seems pretty simple, right? So we're going to take these steps apart one by one. So let's take the first part of activating rights management. This is real simple. All you have to do is basically go to the Office 365 portal, and then you go down to Service Settings. And if you see on the top there, Rights Management over on the far right, and you'll notice there's an option underneath there that says Manage. And when you click that, you'll see an option to actually activate rights management. Okay? So that's all you have to do, just basically click Activate. Now, one thing you may also notice is that, especially E3, well, E3, E4, I've had this question from some customers. You may also see another option on there for more advanced rights management features, and if you click that, it will prompt you to sign up for Azure rights, an Azure account. Okay? The only reason why you would need to do that is if you plan on creating your own RMS templates. Okay? If you're not going to be using RMS templates or don't have a need to do that, that's not required. All you need to do is just make sure you activate rights management in order to use encryption with your transport rule. All right. Second step, like we said before, is to configure Office 365 or Exchange to use the Azure RMS service. And you're going to do this through the PowerShell connected to your tenant, and it's a series of commands. The first command here is to configure the RMS online key sharing location. And basically this is how we specify the endpoint that we're going to connect to for the appropriate RMS keys. Okay. Now, the command you're going to use is right up there. You can read it just as well as I can. It's set IRM configuration, and with that one parameter, RMS online key sharing location. The location is dependent upon your geographic location. So, as you can see up here, we have several different URLs you would use for North America, Europe, Asia, South America, etc. All right. So again, pretty straightforward. The next option is to import the trusted publishing domain from RMS Online. Now, the trusted publishing domain is basically, it contains all the RMS templates that are available for you to do things like encrypt messages, apply, do not forward, etc. So what we're doing here is we're specifying the online trusted publishing domain so that we can use that service templates within our encryption plan. So you need to make sure you specify that. And again, the name, it's not a misprint. I'm not using that as an example. It's just RMS Online, so pretty easy to remember. And then the final option is to go ahead and enable IRM in Office 365 or Exchange. And this is very critical. You want to make sure you run this command, set IRM configuration, and set the internal licensing enabled to true. By default, it's set to false. And that's basically what turns on the RMS integration with Exchange. If you do a get-IRM configuration within your tenant, you'll see all the different settings. And again, you'll see there are settings in there that allow you to use OWA, encryption within OWA, etc. So in order to get any of it to work, you have to turn this on. This is kind of like the master switch, if you will. So, all right. Now, if, let's say, for instance, you get off of this presentation and you totally forget everything I say, and you go in and you say, hey, I just learned this thing. I know it's a transport rule. I go in here, I create the action, apply OME encryption, and I can encrypt all the messages going out external to our organization. You try to do that. If you don't have IRM licensing enabled, you're going to get an error message, and this is what you're going to get. As you can see, it's pretty self-explanatory. It tells you can't create a rule containing the apply OME or remove OME action because licensing is disabled. So the resolution to that, go back in, verify that you have licensing enabled, and then go back through and verify as well that you have the appropriate key sharing location and trusted publishing domain, all that kind of cool stuff. You also get an error message if you're using the graphical website, and you can see there it'll tell you can't create a rule because IRM licensing is disabled. So pretty self-explanatory. All right, so let's take a look at this scenario in action. I think what I'm going to do at this point is just kind of walk you through real quick where some of this stuff is, and then maybe it'll make more sense. We'll come back to it as well. So let me see if I can switch over to my desktop. It may take a moment or two. Okay. Now I'm going to wait for it to come up here. And let's see here. All right, so it looks like you can see my desktop. Okay, so let me go over here. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the liberty to log on to the Office 365 Admin Center. And like I said, just to show you where you go to enable it, it's pretty self-explanatory. You go down to Service, like I said before, Rights Management, and Manage. Now, in this case, when I click Manage, you'll notice that I've already got it enabled. So it'll give me an option to deactivate. And then here's the information I was telling you about before, the Manage Advanced Rights Management features such as custom rights policies. And again, it tells you that you have an Azure subscription in order to do that. But again, you can do that if you need to. All right, so I'm going to go in here and let's switch over to the Exchange Admin Center. And I'm going to go through the process of creating a transport rule to apply message encryption. So I'm going to go down here to mail flow and go to my rules. It looks like it's already selected. And I can, if I wanted to, create a new rule based on any of these existing kind of templates. I'm just going to create a new rule from scratch. And let's see. And what you'll want to do is also click More Options. That'll give you a lot more options, and you'll be able to see the encryption options as well. And I'm going to say, okay, if the recipient is, let's say, external, outside my organization. Let's see, and then I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to modify the message security. And you'll notice there's my options. There's Apply Office 365 Message Encryption and also Remove Office 365 Message Encryption. So it's pretty obvious which one you select if you want to apply it. But the question I think a lot of people have is, okay, I get the idea of applying message encryption, but what about removing Office Message Encryption? Why would I want to do that? The answer is this. If you apply message encryption, let's say, and you do it to messages that are sent internally, I don't know, between, let's say, trading groups within your financial organization or whatever. Okay, those messages will be encrypted so that only the intended recipient can decrypt it. What that means is if you are using other Office technologies such as e-discovery or anything like that to locate information, if the message is encrypted, you will not be able to perform any kind of search on it. Now, in that case, you would probably want to remove Office Message Encryption for that purpose if you needed to. Now, one other caveat you need to keep in mind is if you're going to be removing Office 365 Message Encryption, the only way you can do that is if the message that you're trying to decrypt was encrypted using the tenant keys. So in essence, if somebody's from externally sent it to you, if you don't have access to their keys for that tenant, then you're not going to be able to decrypt the message. So again, something to keep in mind. All right, I'm going to select Apply Office 365 Message Encryption. And again, if you wanted to, you could do any of the other options here. We want to make sure Enforce is selected. And let's see, I'm not going to really worry about the other things there. So, all right, I'm just going to go ahead and save this. Again, this is a really simple rule, but I want to emphasize that you can be as complicated or as in-depth as you need to be, because again, you're just using a transport rule, and it's the same type of situation in DLP. So you could actually create a DLP policy if you wanted to, let's say, for instance, maybe create a rule or a DLP policy in your organization where maybe credit card information, anything that contains a credit card information is going to be encrypted when it's sent. Same thing, because again, you're using that transport agents and infrastructure to create the rule. So, that's definitely doable. Okay, so now we have our rule in place. I'm going to go ahead and go over here to Outlook, and I'm going to go ahead and send myself a message here. So I'm just going to send another one. Let's see. All right, and I'll go ahead and send it. So again, I'm not doing anything special on the user side. I'm just creating my message the way I normally do, sending the message, and allowing the transport rule to evaluate it as it's going through its transport pipeline. Okay, now let me do this. I'm going to switch over here to Outlook and see. Let me do a send receive here. May take it a while. Any day now. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, there's my Office 365 encrypted message. And if you look over here on the right, you'll notice this is the kind of the notification message that I get. And it tells me very clearly, it says you've received an encrypted message from admin at, whatever my tenant is. And it gives me specific instructions about to view the message. Just save, open the attachment, and follow the instructions. And then make sure you sign in using fbrown@microsoft.com. Again, there's a little default little disclosure, etc. So again, here's my encrypted message. So I'm just going to open it up. And as soon as I open it, that was pretty quick. I open it, that HTML attachment was basically sent a post command to the encryption portal. And you notice I get a prompt here saying, hey, I got a encrypted message. And then it gives me a link to actually view my encrypted message. So yeah, I want to view it. So I'm going to click it. And this is where I get the realm discovery taking place. So it's looking at my SMTP address, and then it gives me a choice. It says, okay, do you want to sign in using or authenticate using a Microsoft account, which is the the live ID, and you can see right here, or am I using an organizational account? In this case, I know my mailbox is in the service, so I'm going to go ahead and choose my organizational account, and it gives me to this portal where I would authenticate, but I'm on CorpNet, so yeah, there we go. And let's see. And then as soon as I provide the appropriate authentication, you'll notice the portal then returns me the decrypted message. And you'll notice up here on the top it says encrypted message. We can replace some of the brand around this to make it a little more personal, but again, there it is. Pretty straightforward. Now, the other thing that's kind of cool about this is that you'll notice I have a couple different options. I can reply all, forward, etc. Now, if I choose the option to reply, you'll notice I have a full array of different tools that I can use to compose my message and enhance the text and whatever. Now, the question you're probably asking is, okay, great. So you're going to reply to this. If you were outside of Microsoft using a Gmail account or something like that, well, how's that going to be encrypted? Is it going to be encrypted? And the answer is yes, it's going to be encrypted. It's going to be encrypted using the sender's key information. Because again, remember, we're just looking at this message as it's being displayed on the portal. So it's not like it's being downloaded to my client. I'm just looking at it through the encryption portal. So I still have access to the sender, the keys, or the system has access to the keys that were used to encrypt it from the sender. So it'll be encrypted using those same set of keys. Okay? So again, pretty cool. All right, I'll just sign out of that. And just close tabs and minimize that. Okay, pretty cool. Let me go back here. And we'll go back to the presentation. All right, so as you can see, it's a pretty seamless experience for the end user. They're giving a notification message. It gives them clear instructions about what they need to do to view their encrypted message. And then they're directed to the encryption portal, the viewing portal, if you will, and then authenticated. Once the proper authentication has taken place, then the message is decrypted and they can see it. So again, basic thing, just create the transport rule. And then on the receiving side, you notice again, it's just the attachment, HTML attachment, which they're prompted to download. Once they open the attachment, they're prompted to authenticate. And then after providing the appropriate authentication, they can view the message. And obviously, if they choose the option to reply, they have a rich feature set with which to do that. All right, so next what we're going to do is take a look at some of the message encryption features. And these are some of the things I didn't get a chance to look at in ways that you kind of maybe enhance it a little bit more to suit your needs. Okay, so as we mentioned, the big takeaway is that we have incorporated this into the transport rule infrastructure. So there's strong integration with Exchange transport rules so that you can incorporate them into normal everyday transport rules. You can also incorporate them into your DLP policy rules as well. So again, pretty straightforward. This just gives you the parameters if you are creating your transport rules from the PowerShell. It's basically just new dash transport rule, and the two parameters you're interested in here are the dash apply OME, $true enables it, and dash remove OME, $true decrypts. All right, now the big thing is you can customize the notification message and the information that's shown on the portal to reflect your corporate branding, which is kind of cool. So again, in the notification message, you notice I've highlighted the area that you can customize, the header text, again, just to let the person know that it came from your company. And you can include disclaimer text as well, so that you can say, hey, this is protected information intended for the person, that kind of stuff. And on the portal itself, you can customize the portal text that you see at the top left-hand corner of the screen to let them know that this is, in fact, your tenant that they're connected to. And you can also include a company logo, which is kind of cool. All right, and again, to do this, you have to do it through the PowerShell. And all these commands, all these options, all these features are set using the set-OME configuration commandlet. And then the parameter is going to vary depending upon what you want to change. Dash email text, dash portal text, and then dash disclaimer text as well. Excuse me. And then finally, you can also add the image. The big thing to know here is that the image size is limited to about 50K. So just be aware of that limitation. All right, and as we've seen already, it's a little bit more modern user experience. You notice it's the same as what an Office 365 OWA client experience is like. So very, very similar to that. So again, it's not as disruptive as it might have been in the Voltage interface. All right, browser support. Again, which browsers are supported, which are not. The big thing to pay here is, of course, with Safari, we're supporting the current release and then the one the previous release. So current and one back, basically. Again, since the browser is really the key piece here, you know, we're trying to support as many as we can: Firefox, Safari, Chrome, on most of the prevalent platforms. Oh, IE11? Yes, it's supported on IE11 as well. I should have put that in there. Sorry about that. All right, and because it's all the encryption and decryption is done on a portal, we can view messages from anywhere on any device. Again, provided that you have the appropriate browser. So again, that experience, these are just some quick screen captures to show you what that looks like. This is obviously on a Windows phone, Windows 8. And you notice there's the notification message, the message HTML, which is our encrypted message. And the same process applies. When you open it up, you're prompted for authentication. And then once you provide the appropriate authentication, you're directed to the portal where you can actually view your encrypted message. So again, and that's what's really cool about it, is that you don't have to worry about, you know, what kind of client you're sending it to. As long as they have a browser, they should be able to view the encrypted message. All right, again, mobile device support. Again, these are just the most popular ones: iOS 6 Plus and above, Android, and Windows Phone 8 and above as well. So, or as long as you have the appropriate browser, I should say. But those are the probably the most current ones. That's what I was trying to get across here, is that we're definitely supporting the most recent devices out there. So. Okay, now more importantly, that's all great, all well and good if everything's working as expected, but what do you do when things don't work as expected? Well, there's a couple tools you can use. A really good tool is a third-party tool called Fiddler. I don't know if you're familiar with that. If you just Bing it and look for Fiddler, you'll find it. And what it is just like a web debugger. And specifically, what it allows you to do is to view the transactions that are going across as you're opening up the encrypted HTML file. And there are basically three events that you want to pay specific attention to. There's one for store.ashx, login, and then you'll see one called E4E view, which kind of reflects a little bit of trivia here. The previous name for it, which was encryption for everyone, E4E, right? View.aspx. So again, and what they reflect is the call to ASHX is when we're posting the information to the portal. The login is when we're getting redirected for the authentication information, and then the E4E view is when we're returning the unencrypted data back to the portal to view, back to the client. So again, usually that's what you're going to want to pay attention to. If there's an error or a problem, a 404, something like that, it'll show up pretty clearly, as you can see in the example there. The other option you have is using Internet Explorer. You can use the browser debug view just by hitting F12, selecting network, and then just you want to look for any kind of errors or warnings that appear in the URL stream that's on the bottom. Now, you can also use other browser debug tools as well. For instance, believe it or not, we've used Chrome as well to take a look at this as well, and in some cases it gives you quite a bit of information. So again, the browser debug, just check to see what type of browser debugging your web browser supports, and you can use that as well. Again, what you want to do is just take a look at it, try to identify any errors or warnings that you see within that within the summary. And then the last one is the test IRM configuration commandlet. And again, if you connect into your tenant, you can run a test-IRM configuration and include that -RMS online switch to perform the test against the online RMS service. And you can see from the results, it goes through a series of checks on the tenant prerequisites to verify that you have RMS set up correctly. And again, what you want is obviously the overall test to pass. If you failed any one of these, it would give you more diagnostic information to kind of return to support with and open a ticket and all that kind of fun stuff. Other than that, unfortunately, there aren't a lot of other types of tools available yet. Again, they may be coming out. I don't know that yet, but at any rate, if you can't kind of diagnose it or narrow it using those tools, obviously you'll have to open up a ticket with Office 365 support and then engage those resources. Okay, so what we'll do next is just finish up looking at upgrading from Exchange-hosted encryption, which was our previous version, which was the Voltage solution, also known as EHE. All right, a little background. The upgrade process began around the first quarter of 2014. To be honest, I'm not sure where they are in the process. They may have completed it by the time as I'm speaking, but the general flow of this is that the current subscribers are notified 30 days before the scheduled upgrade. There's no real action that's required by the tenants, but what happens during the upgrade process is that the existing EHE policies are migrated over to Office 365 message encryption policies. In other words, the rules are transferred, if you will. And then the key thing here is that the EHE mail recipients continue to have access to their old encrypted mail using the Voltage EHE portal, so they can still do that for a period of time. Key thing here is that the EHE account store and emails already encrypted with EHE are not going to be migrated to Office 365 message encryption. In other words, you have a set of encryption keys using Voltage and EHE. Those keys are not going to be migrated or somehow transferred over to the Azure RMS service. So it's like two separate systems. And that leads to this next little important note. The content, and this is very important, is only going to be available for viewing on the legacy portal until the Voltage contract expires. And unfortunately, that date hasn't been announced yet, at least to my knowledge. So that's a really important thing to make note of, that eventually will go away. So. So how do you prepare for the upgrade? Well, there's not a lot you can do. Basically, just they'll make sure that the Office 365 upgrade is completed. In other words, from the transition from the previous version to the current version. During that process, you should have already updated the MX record and any smart hosts to point to EOP instead of FOPI. And again, there's an example there: domain-com.mail.protection. But again, that's just a general best practice. After you make the transition from previous Office 365 version. You also want to make sure you've updated your SPF records. Again, this is more general transition information. And the same sort of applies for the on-premise email administrators as well. You want to make sure that if you're just using Forefront for your message hygiene, you want to make sure that you've already gone through the Forefront Online Protection for Exchange to EOP transition, and then updated the MX and SPF records, as we already kind of talked about. And again, this next screen right here just gives you an example of what the notification looks like. Like I said before, you get the initial notification about 30 days before the upgrade, and the whole purpose of the notification is to introduce you to the Upgrade Center. And the Upgrade Center is a really good source for information on what to expect during the transition. It provides links to learn more about message encryption. And then you will get additional email about 2 weeks before the scheduled update, just to say, hey, it's coming. And the important thing here is to note the last point, which is no option is available to postpone the upgrade. So unlike the transition from the previous version of hosted Office 365 to the new latest and greatest version, you had the option to postpone with Exchange hosted encryption. There is no option to postpone. All right, so what happens during the upgrade? Again, there's nothing here that you need to do. It's done behind the scenes. I'm just kind of putting it out here for full disclosure. So one of the things that's going to happen during the upgrade is that the licenses are going to be assigned. You're going to get the Office 365 Message Encryption package as part of the Windows Azure Rights Management. Again, that's to be more specific, if it's already included in your Office SKU. You can check that using get organization config. And then just do an RMSO subscription status. And then each tenant will be configured to support IRM. And again, doing some of the same things that we saw earlier, right? Setting the online key sharing location, importing the trusted publishing domain, and then setting IRM internal licensing, and then testing it. Again, you don't have to do any of these commands. They're done for you. I'm just putting it here so you understand what they're actually running behind the scenes, if you will. So ideally, you're not going to have to do any of this stuff. All right, the other important thing is the existing transport rules that were created with the Exchange hosted encryption are transferred or moved over to the new service. Okay, in that process, the EHE encryption decryption rules are going to be disabled, and then the appropriate or equivalent Office 365 message encryption rules are created. Now you'll be able to distinguish the two because they're going to be prepended with one of those two messages. Like the old rules will be prepended with disabled-EHE upgrade, and the new rules will all start with EHE-upgrade. So it'll be pretty easy to identify what they are. Now we need to keep the old rules there just in case there is some kind of problem, but again, it's also not to appear to be making changes without your knowing. And then to preserve the rule order, the new message encryption decryption rules are going to follow the old rules as well. So again, you're not going to need to do any change. This is going to be done for you. It's just to let you know what to expect to see. All right. Okay, and again, after the upgrade, you're going to receive another notification email. There's no action required, and your new policies are going to be set up and marked as active. The old ones are going to be deactivated as part of the upgrade. Okay, and then at that point, you're set. You can actually go ahead and create new rules using encryption as needed, or have at it. And the next question is, what happens to the legacy messages? Well, for those of you who don't have hosted encryption or want a little bit more information, what happened is basically with the voltage solution, messages were marked for encryption or decryption simply by adding an X header to the message that was processed by voltage to indicate whether the message was destined to be encrypted or decrypted. So what we want to do is allow those encryption and decryption rules to continue to apply or allow users to view it. To that end, they've added a new flag on the perimeter configuration to allow the legacy decryption to continue to take place, and that's set using that perimeter configuration commandlet. You can use the get command to verify, and it should be set to true. All right. Now, important things that you may want to communicate to your users if they have any old EHE encrypted messages is that once the transition has been made, the portal is going to be view only. In other words, you're not going to be able to reply, forward. Any of those buttons are going to be gone. That's by design. You'll get an updated portal warning letting you know that the content is only going to be available until the voltage contract expires. And unfortunately, there's no option to either archive or download the encrypted messages. So again, that's something to you want to make sure your users are aware of. All right, and then the last thing I have for you today is how do you learn more? There's a variety of resources. Product documentation is available online, obviously, through TechNet. If you're interested, you can also try an Office 365 message encryption 30-day trial or an Azure rights management 30-day trial as well. that's about it. So Heather, I'll turn it back to you and see if anyone has